In this video, I'm going to talk you through how I edited this photo, which was shot on my Sony A7 III mirrorless camera, to look like this photo, which was shot on my Canon AE-1 Program analog camera with Kodak Gold 200 35mm film. To do this edit, I used a Lightroom film emulation plugin called Dehancer. And recently, Dehancer got in touch with me and asked me if I'd like to collaborate on some videos and take their product for the test run. To do this, I loaded up a roll of Kodak Gold into my Canon AE-1 Program, and I went out and shot matching photos on the Canon and my Sony to see what we could get and have some solid comparisons to go against. I even used the same lens on both cameras. If you'd like to see more from that shoot, check out my previous video. Now, I am on the Dehancer affiliate program, so if you do decide to download the plugin, use my discount code Vinster360-10 and you'll receive 10% off, and I'll make a little bit of commission, so that'll be a massive help. However, saying that, all the opinions in this video are my own, and I'm going to give you my honest run through of the Dehancer plugin, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is open up the photo in Lightroom and make the recommended Dehancer baseline adjustments. That is exposure down to 1, contrast to -40, and turn the blacks up to 60. Now this is a baseline to prep the photo for the Dehancer plugin. Once we've got them all set, we're going to open up the photo at the bottom, right click and go to edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. Let's go. Once we open up the Dehancer plugin, we've got our original photo, and on the left hand side all the amazing film stocks that are available, and there's so many to choose from. But as our test photo was shot on Kodak Gold, I'm going to go straight to the Kodak Gold preset and use that to start our editing. Now the first thing you'll notice here is that the photo is quite dark, so let's adjust the exposure. To do that, I'm going to open up the source tab and we're just going to adjust the exposure compensation as needed. So once I'm happy with the exposure, I'm going to go into the film developer. Let's switch that on, and I'm going to use this to pull down the contrast a little bit, because I feel there is just a touch too much contrast at this stage. So just pull that down just a touch. Next up, we're going to go into film compression, and I don't want to overcook everything at this stage, so I'm just going to pull that down just a little touch, give us something to work with. Next up, the expand tab. Now this is where you're going to be able to adjust your highlights and shadows. I still think there's a little bit too much dark in the shadows, so I'm going to pull down the black point to make it a little less contrasty in the shadows. Next up, we've got the print tab, and this allows you to select what type of paper the finished photos printed on, and the other options look absolutely fantastic. Kodak 2383 and the Fujifilm, but to be most like our original photo shot on Kodak Gold, let's keep with the Kodak Endura glossy paper. Now we've got the color head tab. This is where we can make some color adjustments, but I honestly haven't had time to play with this too much, so I'm going to leave it set as it is and adjust the colors in Lightroom. Now let's talk about some of the characteristics of film. Vignette, there's none really in my original photo, so I'll switch that off, and all of a sudden it pops and looks absolutely loads better. Now I want to talk about these two tabs, halation and bloom. Halation is a glow or red halo caused by the light passing through the film and bouncing back onto it. Now, it's not often seen in the kind of photography and film photography that I do, and many of the film stocks that I use have anti-halation layers. Also, different shooting conditions, like shooting in bright daylight, you might use a smaller aperture and a higher shutter speed. That would also help prevent halation. I've seen it being overused in these kinds of film emulation plugins, and it's absolutely non-existent in the photograph that we're editing today, so we won't be using it in this particular edit. Bloom is similar to halation, but not quite the same. It is caused by light entering the lens, scattering about everywhere, bouncing around, and it can cause a soft glow and often blow out the highlights a bit and give a certain characteristic to film. However, I mostly shoot with the Canon AE-1 Program and the Olympus OM10, and the Canon FD lenses and Zucchio Olympus lenses have multi-coated layers to prevent bloom from happening, which is why I don't often see it in my own film photography. However, saying that, if I was trying to edit this photo in a way to emulate that it had been taken on something like a disposable camera with those cheap plastic lenses, I may look to add those in. But however, for the purposes of this edit, we're going to miss them out. With all that in mind, I'm going to switch those off because I don't believe there's any need for them in this particular photo, and let's talk about film grain. Now, to check the film grain out, I'm going to zoom right in, and I like to have a look at a big area like the sky. It's where we're going to see most of the impact of the grain. Now, one of the things it's really important not to do is to overcook it. So we're going to zoom into our original photo at this point and try and compare a similar area to see how the grain looks on the photo shot on Kodak Gold 200. I'm going to start by pulling down the grain because I don't want to overcook it at this stage. And on the original photo, I did notice there is a bit more grain in the shadows, so I'm going to lift that up. That grain is looking pretty good to me. However, one of the things I noticed on the original Kodak Gold photo was a couple of scratches there and there. You can only just make them out. They must have been on the negatives. So one of the things we can do with Dehancer is add some film damage. So I've switched on the film damage and I can see it's added a couple of dust specks. However, this film was developed in a lab, fairly dust-free environment, and also scanned there. So you can completely customize it. There's hairs enabled. I don't think there was any hairs on this. If I'd have developed it at home, I might have got some of my cat hairs on it. That sometimes happens. You can completely customize the scratches, and every time you press refresh, it will cycle through different options until you find something that you're happy with. However, I think I'm just going to leave that film damage switched off for now. So there we go. I'm pretty happy with the editing of that photo in Dehancer. So I'm going to move over to Lightroom and finish it off. So we just click OK. So back in Lightroom, and I still feel like it's a little bit underexposed, so I'm just going to boost that back up a little bit. Comparing the originals, I still think there's a little bit too much contrast, so let's pull that down a little bit, and let's also have a look at pulling those highlights down just a touch. Now, this is looking really, really good, but the colours aren't exact, so let's work on some colour grading in Lightroom. The first thing I'm going to work on is these greens and yellows in the daffodils and the grass, so I'm going to push those yellows up a touch, and I'm also going to boost the greens. Next up, I think I'm just going to lift the shadows a little bit to see if we can get a better match in the grassy areas. So let's just give them a little bit of a boost. Now the sky is looking quite oversaturated, so I'm going to go down to the saturation of the blues and just pull that down a touch. It's getting there. Let's go into the hue and also pull down some of the hues on the blue as well. Now, one of the things I've noticed at this point is I've probably not added enough grain, and the walls do kind of look a little bit flat, so I'm going to add some texture. That is definitely making the bricks on the wall pop a lot more and definitely makes it look a lot more like the photo shot on Kodak Gold. However, it's not resolved the grain issue, so what we're going to have to do to fix that is go back to our original RAW file that we prepped for Dehancer, go back to edit in Dehancer and open up Dehancer again. We're back in Dehancer and we can select last edits. This brings up everything that we've just been working on. However, it is on a new photo. So let's increase the size of the grain and let's increase the amount. That is looking a lot better. Now, what we need to do is to save that photo from Dehancer. However, unfortunately, what it does at this stage is it'll save that photo as a new image in Lightroom without any of the adjustments that we've just been making. So to resolve that, I'm going to go over to the photo that we've been editing. We're going to copy all of our edits that we've just been working on, and we're going to paste them onto the new Dehancer file, and that gets us back to where we were. So just looking at this photo, and I think I'm just going to make a few final adjustments and we're pretty much there. Just gonna play with that exposure just a little touch more, and I think I'm also just gonna turn the warmth up a little bit. Now that is looking pretty much as close as I think I'm gonna get it. I'm really happy with that. Looks very close indeed. For me, that is really close, so let's get that one exported so we can have a look at the results. Here is the photo shot on my Sony A7 III, edited in the Dehancer film emulation plugin with some slight adjustments in Lightroom to the colour, and here is the photo shot on my Canon AE-1 Program with Kodak Gold 235mm film. Well, I think that the results I've managed to achieve using the Dehancer Lightroom plugin are pretty awesome. I'm really pleased with how I've been able to edit that photo shot on my Sony to make it look like it was shot on the Canon. If you want to see more photos and more examples from the roll of Kodak Gold that I shot on the Canon AE-1 Program, check out my previous video. It's a bit of more of a behind the scenes vlog on the shoot, and there's lots of examples of photos taken on both the film and on the digital camera. Of course, if you do decide to download Dehancer, head over to the Dehancer website and use my discount code Vinster360-10. That would be absolutely awesome and I'd really appreciate that. Dehancer also has an iOS app and I've downloaded that on both my iPhone and my iPad, and while I was out shooting that roll of Kodak Gold, I took some photos with my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and we're going to be able to look at those in a future video. And recently I revamped this little Olympus Trip 35 and I shot through a roll of Ilford HP5-400, so I'm going to be able to do some comparisons because I got some like-for-like photos on my phone during that shoot as well. So if you've enjoyed this, you found it useful, check out my last video, the A/B comparison from film versus digital. Look forward to my next video on the Olympus Trip. This one didn't work out as planned at all. That's quite a fun one. And yeah, drop a like, give me a comment, that thumbs up. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.